So, good evening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the tour. Was it your first time? Yeah, it was mine as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and architecture enthusiasts, I am Hamad al and I would love to welcome you today. Thanks for joining us today. So, this is will be like a unique session that brings together a community passionate about architecture, sustainability, and spiritual essence and sacred places. Our esteemed guest, Sumaya Dabbagh, it's not just an architect, it's a pioneer who, after designing the Girgash Mosque in Dubai, became one of the first female architects who designed a mosque. Her work is a testament to the fusion of modern and contemporary design with rich cultural heritage and historic preservation, fostering a sustainable future that honors the past, as well as embrace the architectural journey. As we embark on this architectural journey, we will delve into the profound connection between sustainable design principles and the construction of worship and sacred places. These sacred places hold immense spiritual and communal significance, can be thoughtfully designed to minimize environmental impact and promote sustainable living. Welcome, Sumaya, and we're happy to have you here with us today. But first of all, I'll have a question for the guests.
Thank you, Hamad, for hosting me and for moderating.
We are honored. It's our pleasure. So a question for the audience. I'd like to know how many architects here we have today. Okay, a decent amount. And how many female architects we have here in the room?
Okay, mashallah.
That's interesting. So, welcome one more time, Sumaya.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
So, before we dive into the specifics, could you share your journey as an architect? How did it start, and what motivated you to pursue a career in architecture and construction?
Actually, it goes back to my childhood and the environment that I grew up in. I was born in Jeddah. I'm from Saudi Arabia. And my grandparents lived in Taif. And we used to go up to Taif the weekends. And the mountains there are really impressive. You have mountains that go up to 1,800 meters above sea level. And I was very impressed by it, there was a feeling created by their presence. Age 13, the family moved to UK, and the mountains were replaced by man-made buildings. And I became really curious to understand the impact of those structures, whether man-made or natural, on people. And I think that curiosity eventually led me to study architecture. So geology was replaced by architecture. I was actually very interested in geology as a study, and I considered it for a while.
And actually, we can see how that's actually reflected within your work somehow, you know? Like the geology, the connection to land in a way.
Yes, true. And I think for me, it's always been the experience that and that feeling that is created. So that intangible element has really been a search throughout my life. And I found that in architecture, we could really enhance that and create something that is memorable for the visitors. So that's how it all started.
Yeah. So moving to the next question, could you share your insights into your unique architectural style and the principles that define it. I mean, I know we're talking about within the niche of sacred spaces, but I mean, worth mentioning, of course, your previous projects, for example, the award-winning Mleha Archaeology Center in Sharjah, which is like a unique project that situates in like a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which dates back to like 90 million years ago, or Al Ain Museum. So, I mean, like there are even like the Girgash mosques, there are different typologies, but somehow they are connected through your architectural vision. So,
thank you. I think really the starting point always is the site. So it's how to respond to that context, both physical and maybe intangible in case of historic sites which have a memory. You know, the place has a memory, and how to really tap into that, how to honor that, how to respect what is there. That's always been the approach. And I think that way there is a dialogue is created then with the place, and there is a dialogue with the place and the architecture that creates a connection. I think when there is a connection between architecture and place, that can support the visitors that use it or the users to create a connection to the place as well. So I think, you know, the whole idea of kind of creating a sense of belonging, if the building belongs to where it is, it can support that in the people that live there. And in this region, which is very young and also developed very quickly over a short period of time through a lot of imported architecture, imported values in a way. And we lost that connection. We lost that connection to place. We lost that connection to the land. And I think architecture can help bring that back and really reclaim that connection.
Of course, yeah. That's interesting. Also, like sustainable architecture is a significant focus on your work. How do you approach sustainability within your designs? And what are the principles do you prioritize?
I think, I mean, just to go back to the word sustainability, I was talking to Shahad. It's a word that has been used a lot since 2000s, but actually it's something that we are very familiar with in this region. Not that long ago, we were very connected to the land, to the earth, to the materials what was around us, and our environment the environments that we created and the built environment we created were extremely sustainable. So this idea that it's something that we have to learn, I think it's something we have to remember. It's it's kind of it's that again, that connection to place that is going to bring that connection to the land, and therefore that I mean, to give you an example, during COVID, we were very restricted in movements. In Saudi especially, there was a lockdown for 15 months. So people were forced to, I mean, they couldn't travel, and so we were forced to really explore the country, which is very diverse. Similarly, in the UAE, I think people went to the mountains and went to different parts of the country. And I think that I saw that really as an incredible opportunity to get to know the land. And I mean, the whole talk about sustainability, it's really about connecting. When you really are connected, like, you know, to the land, it's a relationship like you have with a person, that you start to care about it. And when you care about it, then you're going to look after it. So it really has to come, I mean, to that basic principle of really having your heart in it, heart in the land, so that you are gonna, the way that we consume and abuse really the planet will shift, and it's really that mind shift that has to come first, and everything else will follow. I really believe that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like our ancestors had a huge connection with the land, and even like the early humans, like they literally lived in caves, so they had that connection to land. But like with urbanism, we sort of moved away, and we started to move away a little bit. Yeah, that's really interesting. Like it's an interesting way to see like buildings and architecture and urbanism, and because like we moved away from the land through urbanism, but actually urbanism can bring that connection back as well, or like right architecture or like a great design can bring that connection back as well.
Definitely, I think architecture has a really important role to do that, and this is really why it's still there is a perception that buildings are real estate and it's the commercial endeavor, but it really they have such a huge impact on our lives, and on the planet. So really needs to be reframed.
I'm moving to the next question. What distinguished the experience of designing, I'd say, worship places or sacred spaces as uniquely special for you, and how does it differ from other architectural projects in terms of significance and mainly challenges?
Good question. As I mentioned, the approach to the way that we design is really about creating experience and creating a feeling, really kind of trying to capture this intangible element. So it's important for a building, obviously, the physical part of it to function, to be beautiful. But what is equally important is the impact it has in terms of just emotional impact. And that's something is very difficult to kind of pinpoint. But I think we've been successful at doing that. So when it came to designing the Gargash Mosque, which was really the first commission, first of all, it really felt like a privilege, because this was a very personal commission. It was for the late father of the family. And but I think what happened really with that project is that that creation of this emotional connection to the building, the intangible element just really became exemplified, or intensified rather, because it was a place of worship. And I remember during construction towards the end, when the project was almost finished, and that happened also in other projects in Maleha, you kind of walk into the building, which is still a building site, and there's lots of people walking around, but it starts to take shape, and then there is a moment where it really takes a life of its own, and then something shifts, so it really becomes a different entity. There was like kind of a, that is not mine in a way. And I think also that felt that with the mosque. So it just really feels, those moments are very magical for me, because you're working on paper and you're sketching and you're drawing, and then you start to see the thing come up, and then eventually it is what it is an entity in its own. And I think that's just part of the magic of being in the creative process of designing. So I'm very grateful to have had those opportunities.
I mean, speaking of the Gargash Mosque, can you elaborate more on the maybe the sustainable and eco-friendly part of it, like the sustainable aspect of it, maybe from like the choice of materiality or the orientation of it, or the lighting control.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of just the way that we do design, and yeah, we considered obviously the controlled lighting in terms of to stop heat gain, but at the same time also it was done to create more of a sacred atmosphere as well. I think, you know, lighting can be really powerful, so it helped to do both. In terms of materials, actually, interestingly, it was under construction during COVID, and there was a lot of restrictions of movement of people and materials. And then the Suez crisis happened when the ship blocked the... so a lot of projects really got delayed for a long time. We, however, didn't much because we really used a lot of local materials. We used GRC on the cladding, which was made in Ajman, actually. The aluminium is made locally in the canopy. We used, in some areas, Omani stone, which is, again, regional. There's ceramic factories in the UAE that do really good products. So, I mean, we try, and I think COVID really highlighted this need to be more self-sufficient and not to rely so much on imported materials. And I really hope, I mean, I understand there is a policy to change that and to have a bit more, a kind of an industry. But I think it goes back to that sustainability thing. If you, the cultural element of it, because if you start to make materials locally by the local communities, by the artists, by the manufacturers here, designers or the industrial designers, they're going to have a lot more connection to the place than imported materials. So you're really working at two levels. First of all, it's, you know, you're saving on carbon footprint, importing all this material from outside, but at the same time you're creating, you're producing things that are relevant to the region, relevant to the people, and have some kind of meaning. So it's a win-win, you know. So I really think, this is the way forward, really, for the region.
I remember, like, visiting Malay Archaeology Center, and it's a very contemporary building, contemporary structure, but somehow it blended within the historic and archaeological site, you know. And of course, that's because of the use of local materials embraced that as well. The feel of a blendness, you know, within the land, within the landscape. Yeah, that's that's one of the design principles that we try to embrace, and people are trying to embrace, like, especially after COVID, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I mean, we were invited to. I was invited to participate in the Sharjah Triennial Architecture Triennial this November, which is still on. If you guys haven't seen it, it's really a good addition. So please go and visit. And we built an installation called Earth to Earth using mud brick, and we used palm, which is a reconstituted palm board, actually produced in Abu Dhabi. The Department of Culture and Tourism supported us, and they actually made the bricks and built the installation for us. And really the idea of that is that, I mean, it was taking two materials that are very connected to our history and to our culture, but also to say that these have memories. There's memories of our stories, and it's really through connecting to local material, whether it's contemporary or something as traditional as, I mean, as basic as mud. There is a memory in those materials that also support this connection. So it was a really interesting exercise to do that exploration and to really highlight this idea of the memory of materials that exists. So it's again connects back to whether it's circular economy or just connecting to our history and heritage and reclaiming that. All these ways are really a way to reclaim our heritage and our culture, which I think it's time to do.
I mean, yeah, the name is literally everything, like earth to earth. That's so deep. I mean, it's physically and metaphorically, it's earth to earth. And let's move us to the next question. In what way do you believe sustainable design and religious spaces can influence the community and contribute to a more sustainable future?
So, well, when you talk about religious spaces, I think for me, they're spaces where you want to create stillness, because worship is really, it's a form of meditation. And so you want to really be quiet, you want to create that stillness, you want to connect again, connect to yourself, connect to higher power. So that is, I think, kind of fundamental to creating a place of worship. The element of sustainability, again, we just talked about it. It's how can the materials, the space that you create, can also support this stillness. And I think, using materials that are connected, using materials that have meaning, creating a space that responds to place, can all support this kind of stillness that is created. So I think the two potentially really support each other and go hand in hand.
That's awesome. How do you see the role of young architects in shaping sustainable practices and pursuing the boundaries of a traditional design?
I think this upcoming generation, your generation, have inherited a lot of challenges. And you have a lot of really, kind of problems to solve. But I think it's an exciting time, because I think there is a sense of awakening in this day and age of that. Modernity and progress doesn't mean leaving our heritage, leaving our, there's a narrative that we own rather than be given from outside. So it's really important for that young generation to embrace that. And I think there is huge potential that you are going to be able to do that. And I think because you see the world in a slightly different eyes to my generation. So I think I see, I have a lot of hope that the shifts that, maybe we're pushing towards step by step, maybe, they'll be taken sort of with leaps and bounds in the coming, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
So your work often intertwines with cultural and heritage preservation. How do you balance innovation with cultural sensitivity in your projects?
That's a good question as well. I think, there isn't either or to be sensitive to heritage and culture and to be innovative. I think, if we look at our own history, Islam, innovation was part of that. And so it's really just about acknowledging, respecting where we've come from and who we are, but really, the embracing technology, embracing what it can do for us. But I think always just linking it to meaning, to what is relevant to us. What do we need at this day and time? So the two things are, is it synonymous? That means that they're related or not related, I can't remember. Yeah.
Because like a lot of people think when we embrace the culture and the, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Microphone maybe a bit closer to you.
Yeah. So a lot of people think when to embrace the culture or the heritage is by walking away from innovation and modern life, but it's actually the other way around, because our culture and our heritage is rich with innovation and technological, I don't know how to put it, but it's just for example, we had bargeels, which is an innovative way of cooling the air, and that's a very innovative thing, and yeah, by going back to see heritage and culture is actually by embracing the innovation in a very contemporary way.
Exactly. I think it's just reinterpreting it to suit our lives at this time. But as you said, it doesn't stop innovation. I think I think maybe in the past where it's just been used as just superficial elements or totems, the barjil, you see it everywhere after a while, but it's really not about that. It's about, as you said, an innovative way to bring cool air into a house or a building. So it's really looking at the essence of these things, and not just the shekel,
the
form.
Forms and shapes, yeah. So given the environmental challenges which you already mentioned that we face nowadays, how do you envision the future of sustainable architecture in the region and in the Middle East especially?
I think I'll just maybe go back to what I had said at the beginning, is that really we need to connect to the place. We need to love it. We need to care for it. And that's the only way that things will shift. We need to, I think, it's also about embracing who we are. Our history makes us who we are today. It doesn't mean that we are stuck in one period of time. It's really embracing that history and who we are to create something really new in the future.
So it's always back to land. It's always by reconnecting to land.
Yeah.
So considering your vast experience, what advice would you offer to aspiring architects, especially those with an interest in sustainable design?
Advice, I think, I just really encourage you guys to just whenever you look at these things, just, study history in order to be innovative. Study the past, learn from it, and interpret it in new ways. And I think our identity is shifting very quickly as we develop quickly. So it's really embracing the different times, the 70s, the 80s, whatever, and where we are now. to create to continue that connection. So it's a story that we continue to tell, rather than just starting, from scratch. So I think what is happening also is, interestingly, is there's a lot of archiving. I mean, there's in Sharjah, there's been a great book that Sultan al-Qasimi brought out about building Sharjah. So really, learn from what's been documented, learn from what's there, learn from the richness of the material that is here, rather than really just going to the West for referencing on various projects.
That's a great. Thank you, Sumaya, for sharing all of these inspiring insights and experiences. Your journey as an architect and commitment to sustainability are truly inspiring. And now let's open the floor to our
Thanks,
audience.
Hamad. Thank you very much, Hamad. It's very kind of you.
We are eager to hear from you, like your thoughts, your observations and reflections. Therefore, I will proceed with asking you the following questions. So can you share, anyone share, your experience visiting a worship place that left a lasting impression on you? And what elements of its design or atmosphere made it special for you?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the discussion today. It's been very interesting and informative. I've been fortunate to travel quite a lot, and whenever I visit a spiritual place, I am always captivated by the ceiling. I think a lot of times we look straight and downwards, but we don't take the time to look upwards. And these places of worship force us to look up. And I'm always amazed by how much of care and thought goes into the designs and the elements. And a lot of places of worship, they do use the past to reflect on the future. So that is definitely something that stands out. Of course, there are other elements in the building's design and the layout, and as you said, instilling that quietness. But for me, as a reminder to myself, just always look up. I always find that a lot of care goes into the ceilings.
Yeah, can I add to that? I mean, the vertical axis is really very important because that really represents the divine, and we. I mean, in mosques, you have domes that actually, mosques traditionally, the beginning, for a few hundred years, they were colonnaded, and then the Ottomans mastered the construction of large domes, so that they became really impressive, and that, they represented that looking up. And then churches, obviously, they got taller and taller in the Gothic times, and so all of these, vertical axis really is very crucial in religious buildings. The other element of Islamic design that we also felt very interesting, the decoration in mosques, and there's a repetition of patterns, and really, if you take the essence of that, is really about creating this. I mean, the actual ritual of salah there's repetition to it. There is the number of people there. There is and moving in that unity. So there is that the patterns reflect that idea of unity and togetherness. So, I mean, in the mosque, for example, we took a geometric form, an Islamic geometric, but we deconstructed it, but then used it in the same way, but in a contemporary way, but to get the same effect. We repeated it throughout to get this idea of this unity. So again, it's about really reinterpreting these. Really understanding the essence of them, and then so that you're able to reinterpret them.
I have another question. How does the architecture of a space impact your spiritual or reflective experiences? Can you recall a moment when the design of a place influenced your feeling or thoughts, such as your earlier visit to the church, the mosque, and synagogue here?
It actually harks back to your first question as well. And it was at La Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. And going there with thousands of people, literally, you know, outside and in, I felt this extraordinary connection of joy and lightness and delight, absolute delight in the place, with the stillness that Sumaya was talking about. And really experiencing both was extraordinary, that tension of opposites, of ascension and grounding all at the same time. So that was extraordinary, an extraordinary feeling.
Interesting. I mean, Sagrada Familia is like one of a kind, you know, where you feel, where it's joyful and spiritual at once, which is an interesting for like a church or like a cathedral, you know. Yeah.
And another thing I loved about it was the fact that it is a work in progress, and has been for over 100 years.
Yeah.
It's evolving consistently.
Which adds to the experience.
So the story
for, like,
there,
visitors,
the story
you know?
is there.
Yeah.
You know, it's evolving in front of you.
Lovely, interesting.
I think I wanted to tack on to what he said and everything else that was discussed. I think not just a specific example, but I found that every time I went to a place of worship, whether it was a Buddhist temple or a church or anything, I felt like when it was being used for the purpose of worship is when it was the deepest sort of experience for me to watch and sometimes be part of. I find that the architecture, when it responds to that aspect of worship, is when it's most successful, when it's trying to elevate these people's endeavor to connect to a higher power, is when it becomes very powerful. Yeah, as a vehicle for worship.
Worship places are something unique because, like, the typology of like a worship place is, I mean, of course it has a function, but the function is more something spiritually and something intangible more than a tangible. So like we pray as like a performance, but it's way deeper than this, you know. It's something spiritually and something intangible. So designing a worship place is crucial, you know, because it connects with something more like an intangible function rather than certain practices or certain performances, you know.
Just one thing that I am considering here is the very small church in Greece that is almost fit inside a shoebox and has this power. So this is so incredible.
Yeah, I think also something I've noticed, I think if there's an intention to create something for worship, and that is, you know, that's what you want, you know, the experience of the worshippers, then it really becomes powerful. But sometimes religious places are not built for that intention only. They're to show wealth, I mean, you know, historically and,
Exactly.
and now to, you know, to be really done. I mean, Gothics kind of went, yes, exactly. They just kind of got more and more showy, and it lost that essence of actually a place, you know, for a group of people to worship together. So I think intent, I really believe that intent has a huge impact on that intangible element.
True.
If the intent is there from the beginning, then that supports it. If not, then it creates something else. You know, the energy changes.
Yeah.
all the iconography in the Catholic Church was more like to lecture people than any other thing, because they couldn't read, they were illiterate, so through the icons, so it's to really lecture people for them to follow, yeah.
Right.
Or I am from Brazil, so the colonial churches were built a little bit higher than the normal standards of houses to show more. Yeah, it's a kind of power.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Many things behind.
Are there specific cultural elements you believe should be incorporated into modern architectural design to maintain a connection with heritage? Whether it was like a mosque, a church, a synagogue, or any worship place.
Hi everyone, this is Shahad from the SDG Youth Council. I'd like to start by saying thank you to Sumaya and Hamad, and thank you everyone for attending. We're really pleased to see you all. We're happy to see also a lot of females joining, which is truly, truly heartwarming, and we're very happy, very pleased. It's been a really interesting conversation. Thank you, Sumaya. I'm not an architect. I just love architecture. I think it happens when you have friends who are architects. They just take you to places and start knocking on walls and telling you what is that and what is this. But I've interacted. I love to think about space as a person with anthropological background, about how we create spaces. And to your question about, I think I will answer two questions in one. I'll also ask a question. So I love the Abrahamic Family House. Not because they allow us to host our sessions here, which I think is also the reason why I love them. But it also sends, it's a unique kind of structure, but it's also something that we used to have. So mosques and worship houses, they're often used to be multi-purpose places. People used to get married in mosques. They used to go have lectures, learn. Schools at some points were mosques. So for example, in the UAE culture, المطوع, which is the traditional teacher, is the same person who is the religious person, and the mosque was the educational and the worship site. And this has slowly kind of gone away as we evolved and as new institutions were developed. And I think this element of mosques becoming more than worship spaces and becoming kind of spaces where people can exchange knowledge is the element I want to see more happen. And that's why I love the Abrahamic Family House, because they have the forum where you could have so many things. You got a cafe, you got a space where you could have conversations, you got a museum, a tiny museum over there if you haven't checked it out. So I think this is how I envision modern mosques becoming. And I think it's an integral part to think about worship as a part of your worship places, and worshiping a higher power as an integral part of your lifestyle is not something that you have to stop to do. It's something that you can do while still do other things, while go have a coffee, while go listen to something. So I do love that kind of, we're at this period where we're post leaving religion and back to reintegrating it, especially with the push from COVID. I was about to say COP28, from COVID-19. So I feel like there is something that I want to say, and I've got two questions for Sumaya. One is, how do you see the future of Middle Eastern or Khaliji architecture going? How do you see the concrete, which has been kind of part of our modern cultural heritage, evolving and becoming? What do you see it becoming? And I'm going to ask the question which I perceive as the elephant of the room is, how was your experience as a woman? What do you think the challenges that women face today in architecture? Because I know it's a global problem, women in architecture, and it has been there. So tell us your insight.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'll address that last question first, which is, I think it's just really important to have a diversity, because we are building our environment. And if our environment is built by one very narrow section of society, which is male, often white, they're not representative of who we are. They're not representative of the demographics in the region. So the more diverse the pool of architects are, the more the architecture will have more meaning, will have more relevance to our communities. So I think that's one element, and it's encouraging to see women, and I think even in my time as a student, there was a lot of women in education. However, the numbers just really drop as you move through. I mean, as they move through their career, and I really think the industry here is not very accommodating to women who want to have families and careers and stuff. So it's I think particularly in the region, the private sector is very demanding, very tough, and there is really no space to really cultivate women architects in the way that the life rhythm is very different to men. So there isn't that place to accommodate it. But also to say that from what I hear from other practices, I mean, I run my own practice, and that is not very common. And I think what I hear about other practices, people have just become disposable. There is no connection. There is no care to your, to your team, your staff, in the same way a female leader would be. I mean, not all, but I mean, obviously there is that sense of care and community which is associated with the feminine. But it's not only for male and female, but there is that feminine energy that comes with that, and which is nurturing. In a lot of practices that just doesn't happen, and women are pushed to work long hours. So it's really, I think the more representation we have, the more we have the chance to shift this situation. So I really encourage women to sort of persevere until we can have this kind of tipping point where things can start to change. Because if we don't demand them, then they won't change. Yeah, that's on that. I've forgotten what your first question was. I think my dream is just to have more Khaliji architects, more local architects building our own cities. We have to take charge of building the environment in this region. We cannot just be sidelined and allow, foreigners really to build for us. I mean, it really has to. We have to reclaim that role. And we need you guys. We need the women in here, the women architects, and the men, and we need the whole young workforce to start making that shift.
I think, you want to say something? Okay.
No, just to make you feel girls more comfortable, the situation of, the discrimination between male and female, mainly in the construction field, you can make architecture, engineering, is not particular here. You find
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
I worked in the Netherlands. I work in Spain, where I come from. I work here, and you see the same scenario. Obviously, there are some variations in between countries, but unluckily, women is not. Doesn't take the leadership when it comes to the construction or engineering field. It's not a particular, so don't feel that you are alone, because you are not. I do agree with you that in any field, that the female should take more space.
is in the leadership, not only on behind this thing.
Yeah.
However, this unluckily is not only in your culture. Like I say, don't feel that you are alone, because you are not.
Yeah, I think it's a global issue, really. I was really encouraged. I was very privileged to be part of a new publication that came out this month, 100 Women Architects in Practice, and it takes women geographically across the globe, and there are women throughout Africa that are represented, Kazakhstan, Central Asia, I mean, across the globe, not just West. So I was really proud to be representing Saudi Arabia in that book. So that's encouraging when you see there are women across the globe who are making a difference. And I just, we wish to have more.
I just want to add one more thing to that. I think that when we as young female architects see older female architects or more experienced female architects in higher positions take charge and sit down at a meeting and be heard and be listened to, it's really, really important for us, because it kind of like opens that door for us to go through, to kind of like gain the courage to go through. I've experienced that firsthand when I sit down with mostly men, designing, with the engineers. The engineering is very saturated with men as well. And when you start to execute in a project, like you said, maybe during design phase, it's a little bit, you see a little bit more women involved, but as soon as you start going into execution, and then with contractors, it's just, and in my experience, there was this, very strong female presence as the construction manager, and it completely shifted my view onto like where I can arrive and what I can do.
And I think also there's, I really encourage to take projects all the way to construction. I think, this idea of doing the front end and doing the design and leaving the other stuff, there's so many design decisions are made, obviously at the detail stage, but also on site. So it's really important to take that process all the way through. And that's the most rewarding and fun part, is seeing the projects come up. I mean, it really is. So being on site is fantastic, although it can be hot in this country. But yes, it's really the best part of the whole thing. So it is painted as something that is not very pleasant, but I really think it's one of the best part of the project. So
many things are not very comfortable,
exactly.
but the point is this for me. Thank you very, very much for all this sharing, and it's also interesting how when the speakers, when the people who sit in front of us speak and they tell us things that we can connect, how they open up to new dialogues, to new ideas, and they bring up your experience in this room. And this is also something magic that the space enables.
Yes.
And I think you said, Sumaya, at the beginning, you create something, you create a building, you design a building, you imagine, and then you see it existing, and it seems like another entity with a life of its own. And I would say that for the Abrahamic family house, it's also something like this happening right now. I mean, when it was created, when it was imagined, I suppose that the architects and the people who envisioned it had an idea. But then day after day after day, with the people who are coming here, with the activities we organize, with the dialogues we open, with the experience we exchange, the space becomes something else.
Yes, definitely.
Has another energy, another community, and it's still a work in progress. And I think you also said every space, worship, or every architectural design has a life of its own, and it grows. It's never an ended project. Abrahamic Family House is a project going on. It's a community project going on. We are doing this kind of events, and we are honored to have guests like Sumaya and Hamad to help us. We cooperate always, and this I share here because I want you to take it back home. In Abrahamic Family House, we are not solo players. We are a community project, and we intentionally try to cooperate with other organizations like the Sustainability Development Goals Youth Council, who help us organize these events, and this is already the third talk that some of you have seen, and I hope we will do more. But we cooperate also with our members of our community, and we plan to do more in the future, and we are open to your ideas and to your proposals. And finally, to close, I will announce the next event that is happening here, because we try to learn from people and their experience, but we'll try also to create spaces where we explore together things. And on the 31st, we start a new series, a new workshop, which is called ASMA. And our colleague Mahnaz is going to facilitate. The aim is to focus on words and meanings and understanding keywords that we use in the space. If you are interested, I will not say more now, sorry. If you are interested, it's on the media that you found this. Many more projects will happen. We will have again the possibility to talk about the architecture, and maybe the architecture and other spaces where women might need to do something different, and invite also other colleagues to discuss. Every time we do an event, a new topic emerges as part of the community needs. So we keep note of what you have proposed here. I don't know if you want to say something.
I just really want to say thank you very much for hosting this event and creating this opportunity for discussion and dialogue. And really, I didn't know that this existed. I just knew that there was, 3 places of worship here. And it's really great how this is being used. And yeah, I'm very happy to have been invited. Thank you very much. And thank you for Shahad for also reaching out to me.
So thank you again, Sumaya. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your insightful perspective, and we appreciate your time and expertise in discussing the unique intersection of architecture, sustainability, and spirituality. And I would like to thank our wonderful audience. Thank you for your thoughtful questions, and engaging in this meaningful conversation. And stay tuned for more exciting events from the Sustainable Development Goals Youth Council. We look forward to celebrating with you in the future. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.